Today's presentation will be Karma, the cycle of life and death. The word karma actually comes from the root verb kri. It means to do something, or it also means to change the position. And we add to that a suffix, man, so it becomes karma. Some essentials from the law of karma is that we have the right to act. We have the right to do something, but we don't have the right for the fruits of the action. Those are the reactions. Means after we did something, we have the right to choose what we do. But after we have done it, then we don't have the right to choose what we get. So that is the particularity of this law. Now, we were talking about the root verb kri. So a verb, how is a verb created? A verb is created on the basis of the reaction that it produces within the mind. Means a sound or an okay, every action has a sound. Now that sound of that action produces a reaction in our mind, then we create a verb. So a verb denotes an action. What about words? So some waves are created by the action in our mind. And when something happens or when we see something, we don't really see the thing. We see the waves created in our mind. Those waves can be on the basis of the form or on the basis of the action. And now we create a word to represent that wave that was created. Let's see an example. Let's make an effort to make it more clear. Red. We see a red object. So the vibration of red will come from that object. It will travel to our optical nerves, and it will reach our brain, that will connect to the mind. So a vibration will be produced in the mind. Okay, so the vibration of that red color left from the object and through the inferences was transported to our optical nerves, and then it created a vibration in our mind. So that is now to that vibration I will give the name red. So I will create this word red to represent that vibration. Therefore, so many vibrations are coming to our mind through our optical nerves and other nerves, and to those I'm giving words. When any object vibrates, creates a sound and also a color, and that those vibrations will vibrate my mind. So in the case of the red, what you see as a result of the vibration that reached your mind, you call red. It means there was an object, okay, it was red. Now these vibrations reached my mind. When they reached my mind, it created a vibration in my mind, and I said, this is red. Now that same object created also a vibration in somebody else's mind. But that other person also got the name red, but the two vibrations may be different. But because they were coming from that same object, then we kind of use the name red. But it is possible that red in my mind is a different red in somebody else's mind. So it doesn't mean that every object creates the same vibration in the different minds. But as I called it red, and the other person also called it red, so I may think that, oh, we are experiencing the same thing. But that's not always like that. It's not that two people will experience the same thing. So here, the point is that things are experienced in the mind. So actions are also experienced in the mind. We are always acting. As long as we have a physical body, as long as we have vital energy and a mind, we'll be doing action. And even if we do nothing, we are doing action. Just breathing is an action. Being inactive is also an action. If you refuse to act, you also get a reaction for that, because the refusal to act is also an action. And all these actions, what are they doing? They are creating vibrations in the mind. Now that's why reaction is coming, because upon receiving those vibrations, the mind is changing. And as we mentioned in a previous webinar, the mind wants to go back to its original state. And now it has been changed by that action, so it wants to go back. So it has to experience the reaction, and by having that experience of the reaction, then it comes back to its original state. And an action creates different vibrations in different minds. So the law here is that wherever there is action, there is a corresponding reaction. We have seen in previous webinars that the reaction is not always equal to the action. In fact, it is only equal to the action in very, very rare situations where the person, the place, and the time don't change. If we experience a reaction immediately, instantaneously, maybe it will be almost equal to the action. But normally, reactions are experienced after time, passing the time sometimes in a different place and sometimes with different persons. So the reactions will be different. But the point is that the waves produced by the action. Okay, so you have performed an action that created certain waves in the mind. So those are the waves of the action. They get reflected or refracted, means with more distortion. And those are the reactions. We cannot change the reflection, we can change only the action. So after the action gets reflected or refracted, that time we cannot change it anymore. So a reaction, which is the reflection or refraction, depends on the action. And we cannot control that one. As human beings, we are always acting. In reality, every being is always doing some action. Now, the result of that action will come according to the law of nature, not really according to what we want, and has nothing to do with God also. So there is no sense to say, "Oh God, what have you done?" Because it's not God who is doing, is the original action that we have done is being reflected or refracted, and that's what's happening. And sometimes we think many things, many bad things happen in the world, many situations, and why God is doing that. But understanding the law of action and reaction, what is really happening is people are going through their reactions or their samskaras. And it is not that God is punishing somebody or God is rewarding somebody. It's according to the action that one did, one is getting the reaction. But saying this, we cannot remain passive. We cannot justify not doing something because, oh, that is the, let's say, the samskara of that individual, so he has to go through that, so we don't do anything. Us acting in that way, we are also doing an action, and we may also get a reaction for that. So the point here is that we do have to act. If somebody is suffering, we do have to alleviate their suffering, and we have to do the best we can to lead a good life, a proper life, and help other people. So we do have to do that. But we also understand that we do the action, but the fruit or the results of our action don't depend on us. If I do something with an intention to get something, I may not get it. Most probably I will not get it because the result doesn't depend on that I'm doing. Okay. Uh, about the universe. The creation of the universe itself is sustained by actions. The universe is always changing, it's always moving, things are always happening, and all those actions are maintaining the universe. Wherever there is any expression, there is a vibration. If whatever we see, the plants, the animals, the things, air and water, all these are expressions. So there is a vibration. And behind each and every vibration, there is an action. The action creates the vibration. The vibration creates the expression. Talking a little bit about philosophy. The supreme entity, or Brahma, has two principles. One is the cognitive principle. In Sanskrit we call Purusha. The other one is the operative principle, and in Sanskrit we call it Prakriti. If the operative principle is, let's say, inactive, so the Purusha is not being changed. So the Purusha is formless. So at that point, there is no expression. The moment the operative principle becomes active and starts to modify the Purusha, then there is expression. So that first Brahma without expression, we call it Nirguna Brahma. The second one, where there is an expression, we call it Saguna Brahma. Now, in Saguna Brahma, which is the Brahma which with an expression, where the operative principle is active, in this body of Saguna Brahma, we find the created universe, like the physical objects. When some object has come to the level of being a physical object, it means that that Prakriti, that operative principle, has, let's say, crudified the consciousness or the Purusha very much. It means that the crudest principle or the static principle of Prakriti has bound the Purusha to create all these physical objects. So Purusha appears to us in a crude form, in a physical form. The Prakriti or operative principle itself has three principles. The crudest one is the static principle. The middle one is the mutative principle. And the subtlest one is the sentient principle. When the object is in a physical state, it means the static principle is dominating. So the static principle makes the Purusha the crudest, and therefore it becomes the physical objects. So every object that we see is just a variation of the degree of crudeness. And that's why we see different objects, one object different from another. Basically, everything is the same consciousness modified by the operative principle in a different degree of crudeness. And therefore, we see one object, we give a name to that object. We see another one, we give another name. But every object that we perceive in this world, all of them are dominated by the static principle. Because the Prakriti has been crudifying the Purusha in such a way that Purusha is bound in such a way that it becomes crude. All right, now we understand by the philosophy that everything is basically an expression of the same consciousness, the same Brahma. Everything is a modified Brahma. The operative principle of Brahma is modifying Brahma. And then we see it in so many different forms. So all the actions, all the vibrations from the action are also Brahma. Going back to our action and reaction. As a review, every action has a reaction. The reaction doesn't come immediately, it remains in potential form, so it's called samskara. And those samskaras we can accumulate many samskaras because we are doing actions constantly. And eventually, those samskaras or those reactions have to happen. So when those reactions happen, you might have experienced situations that you basically act mechanically, and you will do something that you don't really want to do. I mean, or maybe you know that you should not do. That will be a disgraceful thing that will cause only problems. And when you do it, you regret that you did it, but still, we are unable to avoid it. And that's when the samskara is being expressed. And that happens many times in our life, and we'll think, oh, why did I do that? I should not have done that. At the moment, I couldn't think properly. Yes, maybe you were propelled by the reaction of a previous action, and therefore you had no control over that situation. But as spiritualists, we will see that it is possible to avoid these situations. If the object of our soul is the ego guides the mind. So the ego enjoys the actions. In that kind of situation, the ego will be creating the samskaras. So we'll be getting many samskaras, and there will be no liberation or salvation because we'll be accumulating more samskaras. Opposite to that, if the object of the soul is consciousness, so the mind is directed to consciousness, then at that point, the actions are not really guided by the ego, but they are guided by Brahma. In such situations, we will not create new samskaras, and we will be able to get liberation and salvation. What is that salvation? Is when we get free from the bondage of samskaras. What is the bondage of these samskaras? When I'm reaping the consequences of my previous actions, which might be something good, like I get a lot of money unexpected, and these good things happen to me, then we say, oh, we are in heaven. But it could be reactions from bad actions, so we get problems and more problems. Then we say, oh, we are in hell. Actually, philosophies that say we are in hell or we are in heaven, we will go to heaven if we do good actions, or we go to hell if we do bad actions. In fact, we are experiencing these good actions and bad actions in the life itself, and not after life, because we have seen in a previous webinar that when the mind separates from the body, it means at the moment of death, that mind will remain in an inactive state, and it will hold the samskaras. But in that stage, the mind is not able to enjoy anything, because the levels of the mind that remain are inactive. That mind that remains after that is inactive. To be active, the mind needs the body, needs that vehicle to act. When without it, mind becomes inactive. Inactive mind cannot experience neither pain nor pleasure, just remains in a suspended state, waiting for the moment it will get a new body. And that will happen as long as we don't get liberation from the bondage of samskaras. We keep on getting a new life and continuing exhausting samskaras and getting new samskaras. Now, how to get to the point that will not get these new samskaras? Three processes are there. The number one is we relinquish any desire for the fruits of action. So when we act, we do not claim the fruits of that action. But that needs to be done in a perfect way, and not only in an intellectual way. If we can do that, we will not get a samskara from that action. The second process is we abandon the vanity of performing the action. People do something and they feel proud of it. Oh, I have done this, I have done that, and that vanity is creating the samskara, the ego. Now we abandon that, so abandon the ego also. That is, if we can do that, we also not creating samskaras. The third process, we surrender our actions unto Brahma. We feel that we are not the ones doing it. Brahma is doing it. The action itself is Brahma. The objects in the action are also Brahma. And who is doing the action is Brahma. Now in that case, the I, ego, will not get the samskara. All the samskaras remains with Brahma. No. So this is the best process. And if we can apply these processes, we will not be accumulating new samskaras. And we just mentioned a moment ago that Brahma is everything, or everything is an expression of Brahma. It is the operative principle that is modifying that Brahma, that consciousness, and giving different shapes to it. And when we see those different shapes and they create different vibrations in our mind, we think that these are various objects, but in fact that is Brahma. And if we can see the Brahma in that object, so what kind of vibration will be created in my mind? Brahma. And that's why that vibration will not generate new samskaras. So if I can apply a system, and this system is a technique called brahmacharya. The technique is to see Brahma in everything. If I practice it daily, I will eventually perfect that technique. Practice brings perfection. So the more I practice, the more results I get. If I manage that every action that I do, I can do it with the ideation of Brahma, with a cosmic ideation, then in that case, this practice, brahmacharya, will create such a situation that I will do actions, but samskaras will not be formed. because the vibrations of the action that are coming in my mind are Brahma. So what I'm doing here is I'm still acting, I'm still dealing with some objects and with people, but the vibrations coming from those objects and those people to my mind are filtered by my ideation, and therefore I see them as Brahma. By seeing those vibrations as Brahma and not as just physical objects or ac- different actions and people or so, I'm vibrating my mind with the vibration of Brahma. And that is increasing my feeling of the presence of Brahma everywhere. And the liberation is practically if I fill up my whole mind with Brahma, then I merge with Brahma, become one with Brahma, and that's the liberation. So, what is the technique here? Is to be able to ideate or to create the idea in the mind that whatever I'm doing, whatever object I'm dealing with is Brahma. And that will also help me how to do that action in a proper way, because the guidance that I will get for the action will not be anymore the indirect will from the samskara. It will be Brahma. So Brahma will be guiding my action and not the indirect will. So this practice, brahmacharya, is a very important practice. And different teachers will teach practical ways how to apply this uh, technique of brahmacharya during our day-to-day life. If we become so trained through the practice that every action we do, we apply in this cosmic ideation, that will create a tremendous change in the way we do the actions and the effect of the actions in our mind, and also the effect of those actions in the mind of other people. No. Okay, so this is the essence of the webinar today. Moving now to the summary. As a summary, the point is that when I'm dealing with different objects, when I'm doing actions, when I'm seeing the objects, touching the objects, tasting the objects, listening, hearing, the vibrations get created in my mind. Represent those vibrations with words, verbs, and the vibration created in my mind by an object, which I gave the example red, may not be the same vibration created in the mind of somebody else. Now, those vibrations and waves, which have sound and color, and I created in the mind, they will be reflected. So these actions that create these vibrations get reflected, and those are the reactions. So I have control over the action, but not the reflection or the refraction of that action. And everything, every object is an expression of the same Brahma. So we talked about Purusha and Prakriti. Consciousness means the cognitive principle and the operative principle. And that every object is created because the operative principle modifies the consciousness. So everything is Brahma. Now that is theoretical. If I can make it practical through ideation in every action that I do, then it will not be my ego doing the action and creating the samskara, but it will be Brahma doing the action. So that's the way that one will be able to overcome this cycle of life and death and move towards liberation. So that human life that started when we got the first human body will come to its culmination at the moment that we have exhausted all the samskaras and that we merge into Brahma. So this much as a summary. Now we can have questions